Hello everyone, welcome or welcome back. I have a cock-a-doodle dirty murdy book review for y'all today. If you have guessed correctly, yes, that is Stephen King's Misery. As per usual, I'll let you know when I get into spoiler territory, but Misery, in a few words, is about Paul Sheldon, our narrator, who is a best-selling author, and he is driving through the middle of nowhere when he gets into a car crash. Annie Wilkes saves him from this car crash and brings him back to her house under the guise of the fact that there is in fact a snowstorm, and there is, but she rides off of that to keep him captive and bring him back to life, I guess. She is a nurse, as you will find out, and she takes care of his legs, etc. But does she not keep him there a little too long? And is it not a little bit of a coincidence that she's his #1 fan? I don't know, maybe not. All in all, I thought this was a really well-written psychological thriller. The shift, so there are 4 different parts to the book, and it's always Paul Sheldon's narration, POV, but each section kind of focuses on a different aspect of his experience, which is, I thought, was a really cool way to tell the story and tell Annie's story without changing the character's POV. So you do get a progressive, like, a lot of psychological books are too sudden in the shift in kind of character development or whatnot, but this, I think, was a really good kind of progression into different states of being. If you are like me and you saw the movie before you read the book, I've seen it twice or 3 times maybe, I was worried that the book would be too close to the movie, but no. See, Stephen King writes the scenario to all of his book adaptations except The Shining, so I've noticed that they tend to be very close. A lot of times, maybe word for word, although there are differences, but Misery, there's a solid third of this book, maybe even half, that is not in the movie. And I'm not even just talking about scenario. I also mean like character development and personality, because a lot of, I think Paul Sheldon is pretty true to how he's portrayed in the book, but Annie Wilkes, it kind of reminded me of Silence of the Lambs, where in the book, Hannibal Lecter he's like the cruel, evil psychopath. In the movie, he portrays the more charismatic, charming kind of aspect of psychopathy, and this almost feels the same, where the book and the movie show different aspects of Annie Wilkes' personality, and in the movie, she is really not that bad compared to the book. So trust me, you won't be disappointed if you've seen the movie. I think I'm getting into spoiler territory now. My final words is, I totally recommend this book. Okay. Spoiler alert. So, my favorite thing about this book, I have to say, is, like I said, Annie Wilkes's extra personality traits, or the cruel, evil side to it. Hannibal Lecter being my favorite bad guy, or serial killer, I guess, alongside with Chucky. Actually, I just said that, and I just realized that Annie Wilkes is a perfect blend of Hannibal Lecter and Chucky. She's so not as smart as Hannibal Lecter. She's definitely not as cruel as Chucky, but she's a good mix, right? She's a good in-between, so maybe that's why I like her so much. So yeah, there was a lot I was not expecting in this book, which kept it real. The whole lawnmower situation. Ooh, okay. Can I just say, so as mentioned, the way I think the Stockholm Syndrome and Paul's kind of mental captivity is portrayed in this book, I thought was really well done. I think another cool way Annie Wilkes kept him captive was through the narcotics. I think she definitely, I wonder if there was a way for her to give him pain medicines that are not addictive. So I wonder if she did that on purpose, right? Because, like, I'm no nurse. I don't know what level of pain you're in when you get your legs crushed. Okay. So I don't know what other meds there are out there, but giving him opioids was definitely a good move for her to keep him there. As I'm saying this, I'm realizing one of the more interesting aspects, I think, to her is that you never really know when she's being cruel on purpose, right? Because she does really shift between self-awareness and just being completely zoned out. And one of the things I noted in my tabs is, you know, when you have bad guys and you're like, I don't know if they know they're being bad or if the bad things they're doing fully convinced it's the good thing to do. You know what I mean? And so a lot of times with bad guy or the antagonist, I guess, I really always wonder, are they just being bad because they intend to be bad, or do they just genuinely believe that they're doing the good thing? And it's like we're a different POV, I guess. You never know with Annie, right? And that really kept me on my toes, I think, the whole time. Maybe the fact that I was expecting movie Annie, she does have crazy outbursts in the book that obviously are not in the movie. How she locks him in the basement. Oh, that was weird. The whole locking him in the basement. You never really, well, I didn't really realize until the very end how in control, I guess, Annie was. Like when she reveals to Paul that she knew he had been out of his room because she went through the doorknob, and found a little plastic end on the pin. When I read that, I was like, she knows, and she kept quiet. That's the thing, is that I didn't realize. So I didn't think she had the personality to keep quiet about that kind of thing. Well, she did, but not for that long, right? And I was like, dang, sis. There are a few things, though, that I think were kind of unbelievable about this whole story. For example, the basement scene, okay? So I liked the concept of Annie physically leaving to another place and Paul being so captive, or such a captive in his mind that he doesn't even try to leave. Granted, he's physically unable to, but I feel like you could have had more him trying a little more. I don't know, but anyway, I digress. But the way she literally leaves him, his crippling body with, I think that was like right after she chopped off his foot, right? So he's literally almost bleeding to death with a little makeshift bandage or whatever. And he's been through all that torture, and she leaves him downstairs with what, like a can of Pepsi or two or something like that. And I'm like, you really left for 3 or 4 days and he's not in renal failure or something? Maybe I'm expecting too much realism from this, but I don't know. I feel like he should have either died, or she shouldn't have left for so long, or there could have been something else in the room. Like, I don't know. That is kind of where the story dipped a little bit for me. And the other thing is, I wasn't quite satisfied with the last part, Goddess, right? So when he is delivered from Annie's house and he goes back, so at the very beginning of Goddess, right, you see him and he's like, I was rescued, I drink a lot, I'm going to my publishers with, what are they called? Bound Galleys of Misery's Return. Bound Galleys of Misery's Return, because the publisher wants to fast track the publishing of that book. Knowing damn well, by the way, how it was written. Or I wish the last part of the book would have been beef between him and the publisher, or like the publisher kind of torturing him a little more, because I think what would have been interesting, right, is the Annie Wilkes part is like how mega fandom kind of, I like the mega fandom aspect of an author and a book and how people see themselves in a character or whatever. And then we could have had the flip side of that, where it's the publisher's obsession with Paul and his book, but not from like a personal gain or a character or a creative side to that, but more just like the financial side, and him being like, yo, you were tortured, you were almost beat to death, child, but I need that book because I want the moolah. that would have been a cool kind of author being torn between two worlds aspect to it. I think that would have been great. All in all, I think it was creative how we incorporated the four different kind of perspectives, but also reading Misery or Misery's Return as it was being written. So I have to say, I didn't like Misery or Misery's Return, I guess. So I guess I wasn't Misery's target audience, which is highly reassuring because at least I'm not like Annie Wilkes. Yay! I like to think I would have taken all, like the first time he tries to leave, right? He takes all the meds and such. I like to think I would have tried to exit the house or something. Although I guess he didn't really know how long she would have been gone for, but like that time when she literally tells him, I'm going to my happy place for a few days. I don't know how long I'll be there for, but it's, a few days. Didn't she say a few days? So I'm like, I understand the whole addiction to the meds, so you have to be there, and like the whole Stockholm Syndrome situation or whatever it's called. But I don't know, I would have like taken a bag and taken all the opioids I needed, food, maybe a bottle of water, whatever, and just been like, okay, is it that painful to walk down 2 or 3 steps at the entrance and like, I don't know, and like drag yourself? I don't know. Or, oh my gosh, can you imagine if he could have made it to the lawnmower and like use the lawnmower to leave, like, oh my gosh, Bobby Boucher from The Waterboy. Okay. Paul Sheldon is Bobby Boucher. Have you seen The Waterboy? Completely unrelated. It's an Adam Sandler movie. Very stupid, very good. It's the old ones when they weren't stupid. Anyway. Just watch it and you'll see what I mean. I think my favorite part of this whole story, okay, my favorite part is Annie's rant on Misery. When he writes the first draft of Misery and she goes off on him and she talks about how writers cheat and they're like, oh, she died, but then she lived, and that's like cheating the spectator and whatever. And I'm like, dang, there are so many times in this book where you feel like King's voice is coming through, especially when Paul Sheldon is explaining how writers write or kind of the creative process, which I haven't read on writing, but I assume a lot of that is kind of in here. But when Annie is yelling at Paul and she's like, you're cheating, you can't just bring Misery back from the dead, like, or be like, oh, but she lived or whatever. And I was like, is that Annie or Stephen King yelling at other authors? Because as I was reading this, I myself was like, your girl is right though. She is right. And now every time I read a book, I'm definitely going to keep an eye out for that. Or like a series, I guess. It doesn't really work. Well, I guess it would work for a single book, but Annie was right though. I think that's the one thing that humanizes her in this book, is that a lot of times she is right. She is there, like, in her right mind, you know what I mean? Or seemingly. And I thought it was really creative how we get her backstory by Paul finding her kind of pictures and newspaper clippings and such, because we don't really get her telling her story, but we get Paul kind of interpreting her stuff. So it's like there are a lot of stories within stories in this book, and I love that so much. Stories within stories is where it's at, dude. You want to know something creepy? I'm holding this book like this, okay, and then I'm putting it down and like looking at it like this, okay. Stephen King staring at me right during this book review. Dude, creepy. Okay, anyway. The other thing I thought was kind of cool, though, was I actually read this book and listened to the audiobook at the same time, and I will leave the audiobook narrator and such in the description. I forget who she was off the top of my head, but her tone of voice was almost exactly the same. Well, it was super close to Kathy Bates, and so when she was narrating the story, and in particular kind of mimicking Annie Wilkes' voice, It was so close to Kathy Bates. Oh my gosh. It was so immersive. It was so good. It was so immersive. I loved it. Okay, she's incredible. Can't recommend it enough. So I'll leave all the info below. I listened to it on BookBeat, an app, which is all right. There's not that good of a selection, but you know, it's still good. And yeah. All right, guys, I'm super curious. Would you have stuck around as long as Paul Sheldon did? Would you have done things differently? Would you have tried to hurt Annie or something? Or I don't know. Let me know your thoughts down below. Don't forget to like the video if you did. Subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.